All right, good evening, everyone. We will now call to order the public session of our meeting. The first thing I'll do is report out on closed session and note that no action was taken. And then we will begin with item 4A. And what we're going to do with public input tonight, since this is an unusually early start time for us, is if there are people who have shown up and already pulled chits and would like to speak, we'll hear from them now. And then, on the budget, on item 4A, we'll not be discussing the later item 8A at this point. But there's people who want to speak on the budget, they're welcome to do so now. And then at an appropriate point later in the evening, sometime between 6:45 and 7, which would be more concomitant with our normal schedule of their additional speakers, we'll hear from them also. So, well, now the clerk is running out to get the chit, so we will filibuster. I think after last night's episode, I will now remind everybody in the room to please turn their phones off or on to vibrate so as not to disrupt the meeting.
And Mayor, to be clear, if somebody wishes to speak at this time, they may, but if they'd rather wait till after they hear the presentation to share their thoughts on the presentation, they can do that. They just can't do both, right?
Yes, we're going to be a little freeform on public input, but so I will call these names we have now, and if anybody wants to come up and speak now, they're free to do so. I'm going to have to turn to the city attorney for an interpretation on this one, though. If this is not technically a continued item, if someone spoke on 4A last night, can they speak on it again this evening?
I don't believe so. If someone spoke last night, last night would have been the time that they get to speak.
That's what I would have thought. Okay, so I'm sorry, Mr. Landris, but we heard from you last night, so we're not going to hear from you again this evening. And you can go home and see your wife and kids, who are actually, since I know them, much more entertaining than we are. The other names I have here are Yao Katagiri, Laura Ornelius, Javier Beltran, and Chris Baca. If any of them are here would like to speak, I see Mr. Baca. Come on up.
Mayor, before
Yes.
we go into public input, may I just read the item?
Oh, well, that would be lovely. Yes, actually.
Okay, study session, item 4A, financial status update, fiscal year 2017-19 proposed biennial budget, and fiscal year 2017-18 proposed CIP budget. And we were going to be listening to the budgets for human resources, library, information services, community and cultural services, and finance. And I believe you have 5 requests to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Lugo. And if at any other time in the evening I go off course, please steer me back. All right, welcome, Mr. Baca.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Chris Baca with Meals on Wheels West, and we've been in this community for 40 years, and I just came by tonight to thank you for your support for those 40 years. I know in this time when we're looking at the federal budget and all scratching our head and going, how do we add $2 trillion to $2 trillion? It's really heartwarming that we've got the support, and we've seen tremendous growth in the last 3 years. We've seen 50% growth in the number of clients we are serving. So again, we just, on behalf of our clients and our staff, thank you very much.
All right. Well, seeing nobody else leap up to the podium, I think it's time to hear from Human Resources.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I am the Director of Human Resources, Donna Peter, and tonight I would like to present
Donna, can you just move the microphone a little closer to your mouth?
I can try, but it's not.
Well,
Is that better?
maybe we need to hire more microphone people.
How about that?
Sorry, may I interrupt? You called one of the speakers and she just came up. Did you want to listen to
Certainly.
Laura?
Absolutely. What's your name? Who's the speaker?
Laura?
Come on up, Laura. Sorry, Donna. They always say these budget study sessions are a little looser than our normal meetings, and here we go. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm Laura Ornelas, Director of Family Services, Santa Monica. Came tonight just to say thank you for your support of our Early Childhood Wellbeing Project. And since our clients with young children couldn't be here, I brought a video on their behalf. And I think the sound isn't working, so we've got subtitles.
It's a good thing we're not on radio tonight.
All right, thank you. You got 15 seconds to add anything else you want to?
So you couldn't hear the voices of our clients, but these are families with young children who were not able to obtain jobs, and all three of those families are now in the interviewing process as a result of getting childcare to be able to get the jobs.
Great, thank you very much. All right, now, back to human resources and our regularly scheduled programming. I wouldn't mess with it much more. It's looking good, that microphone.
So I already introduced myself. I just want to, and again, it's Donna Peter, the Director of Human Resources. The Human Resources Department mission is to support the city departments in the delivery of premier municipal services to the community. We do this through attracting, developing, and retaining a progressive and effective workforce, and by supporting the development, personal well-being, and professional conduct of all staff. In the well-being framework, much of what we do falls into good governance. We are an internal service department whose focus is on providing quality service to the operating departments. By doing that, we support them in their goal of excellent service to our citizens. Our focus in the coming budget years will be on supporting and engaging city staff through diverse training and development opportunities, and administering core human resources functions more efficiently. In the next 2 years, just a few of the projects we will be focusing on are implementing a new employee performance management system, strengthening the Santa Monica Institute, and developing a citywide advisory board for the Institute. I would also like to mention that the Public Works Accreditation Team selected 4 model practices that should be shared with other agencies as a guideline, and the Santa Monica Institute was one of those. We will continue working on the new human resources and payroll portion of the Enterprise Resource Planning System, or ERP as it's called. We will also engage employees in improving their health through wellness programs. And finally, we are planning on implementing changes in our benefit administration processes based on recommendation from the city's internal auditors, Moss Adams. The HR department total budget is $4,964,956 for fiscal year 17-18 and $5,023,768 for the following fiscal year. I would like to note a few changes in the structure of the Human Resources Department. I am recommending a reorganization of the department from 3 divisions to 4. I am combining organizational development with employee benefits and separating employment and classification from organizational development. This will allow a more comprehensive approach to employee engagement while providing a greater emphasis on the recruitment function, which last year conducted 278 recruitments, which was an increase of 22% from the previous year. Finally, employee and labor relations and administration make up the other two divisions. Also, you will see we are requesting the addition of a fiscal staff assistant 3. This position will assist in implementing the changes in the administering of benefits recommended by the city's auditors. Benefits for over 2,200 employees and across 12 bargaining groups is very complicated, and there is a need to make sure that we are being as efficient and as accurate as possible while still providing excellent customer service to our employees. I believe by adding this position, we may be able to obtain increased efficiencies that will eventually save the city money. You may also note that there are 2 management fellows in our budget. We will be facilitating the program, but these positions will actually be utilized across the city. This program is designed to help encourage young professionals with master's degrees to pursue careers in Santa Monica government. It also creates a pool of future leaders in Santa Monica and provides a cost-effective means of supporting city projects and objectives. The Human Resources Department continues to be committed to providing the city with the best and most responsive employees through the delivery of quality training, fair and unbiased recruitments, and by ensuring that we stay abreast of the constantly changing and very complicated employment laws and practices common in today's work environment. That concludes my department budget presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. No questions?
I don't see any questions.
Wow, okay. Well, thank you very much.
Who do we ask for a raise? All right.
That would be the voters.
Now on to the library. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, City Council and Mayor. My name is Patty Wong, and this is my first budget process and my first formal introduction to you as your new city librarian for the Santa Monica Public Library.
And welcome. We're glad to have
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's only been 2.5 months, but as a new resident, I can clearly say that I'm very excited to be part of this family, the city of Santa Monica, and especially proud of the fact that we have such an engaged community that provides progressive services to all of our Santa Monica residents. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of that. The library, as you know, the mission of the library is to provide resources, services, and a place to encourage the community to read, connect, relax, and learn. The library supports literacy, lifelong learning, civic engagement, and cultural awareness through the strategic plan that you adopted in 2015 from the library, with 4 main focus areas: a vibrant learning center, a well-being cultivator, a dynamic third place, and a cultural and community connector. And as you know, the library is comprised of the main and 4 branches. There are also 4 divisions that really make the library run effectively. And I have a number of my team in the audience, and I wanted to introduce you to them because they are a strong part of the reason why the library is so effective. From admin and facilities, we have Erica Koyagan, who is our assistant city librarian, and we have Norma Angel, who is in charge of our finances. Information management, we have Greco Venegas. Public and branch services, Cecilia Tovar. And with reference and circulation services, we have Susan Lamb. And also in the audience, we couldn't do this alone. We also have the chair of our library board, Mark Morgenstern. Where are you, Mark? There we go. Thank you. So as you can see, there are not that many changes actually in the overall library budget. They're basically tied to a little bit of an increase due to the CPI. The $38,000 that you see is primarily from a grant that we received from the California State Library to operate literacy services, a service that actually had been dormant in Santa Monica for quite a number of years, so we're very fortunate to have that happen. We do plan services and programs to be very responsive to the city's priorities and the library's strategic plan. So tonight I just wanted to talk a little bit about an update on the plan, activities, and a forecast for the next 2 years. The library continues our services, which dovetails with the City Council priorities and framework. as a vibrant learning center focused on Learn and Thrive. The new multifaceted LEAF, which is our literacy education for adults and families program, includes GED test preparation, Leamos, Let's Read, a program that teaches Spanish-speaking adults to read and write, ESL classes, and early literacy programs for families. The California State Library recently cited the U.S. Department of Education's National Assessment of Adult Literacy, which found that nearly 25% of California adults lack basic literacy skills. And that means that they're unable to read a newspaper or fill out a job application or read a basic medical bottle for their medication, or even read a story to a child. LEAF's primary goal is matching adult learners who want to improve their reading and writing skills with volunteer adult literacy coaches, and they receive one-to-one support. Volunteer adult literacy coaches and adult learner pairs meet regularly at Santa Monica Public Library locations, which provide spaces conducive to learning as well as computer and other literacy materials. We encourage all of our listeners tonight to become a literacy coach and join us, or to share information with our community of adults who might want to better their reading and learning skills. We also hope to attract more than 5,000 readers of all ages to our annual summer reading program. And a little bit of a caveat also, in listening to last night's presentation, we also wanted to mention our strong commitment to kindergarten readiness through the Wellbeing Index, and we are actively engaging with Cradle to Career and our various partners in terms, and using well-being metrics to measure that performance. The library plans several technology improvements to support Santa Monica residents and their well-being. These include a loaning laptop program for teens at the main library, improved self-checkout systems, and a technology plan developed with our ISD department, which will support our digital literacy efforts and our future goals to provide technology and spaces to better meet our community needs. As a dynamic third place, the library is examining our capital improvement needs that need sustainable maintenance practices and planning, as well as an approach that allows flexible use of public spaces, meeting rooms, and the Martin Luther King Auditorium for the diversity of community who will adapt that space to create new learning environments. We are planning a campaign also to get a Santa Monica Public Library card in the hands of every staff member, every resident, and hopefully every student in our schools. As a community and cultural connector, the library will continue to foster relationships and partners with community nonprofits and agencies like our Friends of the Santa Monica Public Library, the school district, community corporation, and with fellow city departments like Cultural and Community Services and the Big Blue Bus, to collaborate on programs benefiting all residents, but especially our 0 to 5 population and their families, students, and seniors. You'll be seeing the library in a number of places. Look for us at farmers markets, at the beach, and at our local community fairs and festivals. And that's all I have for my presentation tonight. I'm happy to take any questions you may have, and my team will help me out as needed.
That was an excellent inaugural presentation. I think
Thank
we
you.
have a question from Councilmember Vasquez.
Okay,
Welcome.
thank you.
And you have a great staff. I've had an opportunity to work with several of them.
Thank you.
And actually, specifically to your newest library
Yes.
that we have in Pico neighborhood, I know you started with kind of like experimental hours, and I know we were looking to branch out and have, like, for example, longer hours and more evening hours, especially
Right.
over the weekend. How are we doing on that? Do we know?
Well, I think what we've seen remarkably is that Pico branch actually exceeds all of our branches in terms of the numbers of people coming in.
I know the demand.
So I think on average we have about 600 to 700 people coming in, especially on Saturdays. But it's frequented by a number of people almost every hour the branch is open. In order for us to take a look at expanded hours in at that branch and in all of the other branches, we'd actually really have to do a study to see how we could make that happen. I don't know that we would be able to expand that service given the same level of staffing that we have now. So we'd have to really take a look at that, because something would have to, we'd have to really look at how we would allocate services at the main library, because that's where it would have to give.
That's the reason I was asking. Is that going to happen this year, that assessment?
We can do that if that's what City Council would like us to do. Absolutely.
Okay. And then you mentioned in your remarks that you'd like to see a library card in all of ours, in everybody's hand.
Yes.
What's the numbers now? What's the percentage? Do you know?
I'm gonna look to Greco real quick. No, total library cards. How many do we have? 90. It's close to 90,000, isn't it? Right. It's close to 90,000. We could get you some additional information about the breakdown of what that 90,000 looks like. I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember McEwen.
Well, I've got my library card in my pocket. If anybody in the room
Terrific.
doesn't have one, it's real easy to
Yay.
get one. Resident surveys in Santa Monica over many years have consistently shown the library to be the most popular department. And when people comment
you.
to me about the library in Santa Monica, the word they always use is more. They want more of what you're doing. What are the considerations in allocating resources to have libraries be open additional days or extra hours? Just what is involved? Because I don't think people understand that it's not just a matter of having one person behind the desk who has the key. What does it take to get a library open an additional day or an additional couple of hours?
It's a combination of a number of factors. We require, for safety reasons and also for good customer service, at least a minimum of 4 staff to be on site, especially in the branches, if that's what the group that we were talking about. I think that's specifically what you're referring to. But in addition to those 4 individuals, at different classifications, we actually need a whole cadre of folks to support their efforts, including our library's service officers, and from a security standpoint, we have to think about delivery, we have to think about other resources to support those 4 individuals, and we're talking about at all sites, if all sites were to, there's a number of factors involved. We've actually would have to think actually about more resources for collection as well, and a number of other services to support that effort.
It's been a number of years since we were thrilled to reopen libraries on Friday, which had been cut in a previous budget shrinkage. Is part of your plan to assess where the need is? In other words, it might not make sense to keep the library open from 9 to 10 at night because nobody would be there. But it might make sense to have it be open at some other point during the week. So how does your department assess the need?
So one of the things that we pulled together a little bit of data for you already, comparing, because I knew this question might come up, comparing Saturday hours, for instance, at all of the branches and how much traffic there is at the branches versus the main library, and potentially allocations. But we would probably need to do a time study to see how many people come in per hour, and take a look at our budget, and especially work with finance, I think, to make sure that we could make all of this happen, because it would require, I think, additional resources or a reduction of services at the main library.
Yeah, we all have to work with finance.
We do. The main library, for instance, the main library actually, on average on a Saturday, I'll just use that as an example, because I think if we were talking about weekend hours, we would be looking at that. The main library attracts generally about 2,000 to 2,300 people every Saturday. That's a lot of people. On the other hand, our branches generally are only seeing about 200 to 250 people. So you can kind of see what the difference I'm kind of leading to. Pico, on the other hand, actually is probably, it's at a high of about 500 to 600 people on a Saturday. So those are some of the factors that we would take a look at. But I think my team and I are happy to give that some really much deeper analysis and work with finance to see if we can approximate something.
Well, thank you, because the public has expressed the interest.
Absolutely.
So
thank you.
Councilmember O'Connor.
Hi there.
Hi.
So is Santa Monica, are we still a member of the Southern California Library
We
Cooperative?
are indeed.
Could you
In
tell
fact,
us a little
I'm
bit
going
about
there
that?
tomorrow to the council meeting. It's a wonderful consortium that we belong to, and as a result of that, actually, we are privy to a number of grants and other opportunities. It's a consortium of, I think, 49 other jurisdictions. They represent city, county, special library districts, mostly public libraries, but there are a few public law libraries that are part of that constituency, and some school library institutions. Through that consortium, we meet actually every other month to discuss issues that pertain to all of us. We work on supporting legislative activities that benefit libraries. We do a number of other activities as a consortium, as a group, to seek additional activities that would benefit all of us, including some that actually go across jurisdictional lines, where we can combine resources to provide better customer service to each of our groups.
Is that why I can have a City of Los Angeles library card?
So one of the things that is part of the California Library Services Act, which is a state act, actually, is that we have reciprocal borrowing and lending. Part of the reason why we also belong to the consortium is that we are eligible as consortium members to state library funding that comes and is administered primarily through federal funds. But that is one of the reasons why not only can you borrow any material from a number of agencies throughout the state of California, but you can also return your materials anywhere, and it will get back to its home.
And now you can take Expo Light Rail to downtown LA to go to that library also.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're a full-service institution. Yes. Anyone else?
I think that's all the questions we have,
Okay.
so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll now move on to information services.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Joseph Cevitello, Chief Information Officer and Director of Information Services Department. I'm very pleased to be here tonight to speak to you about the biennial budget. I'd like to begin by saying this is my first budget presentation in front of council as well. As you know, I joined in October, so I'm a little bit more of a seasoned veteran than Patty, but she set a high bar, so I'm going to try to keep it up there. I want to start by saying I'm very fortunate to lead a 50-person strong team of very talented and dedicated individuals, one of whom is with me, Oscar Santiago, principal analyst. He'll bail me out if I get into any trouble here. ISD has been primarily an internal services department, but that's increasingly changing. We're starting to focus our efforts on providing services to our citizens, our businesses, and our visitors as well. And like any organization, we're looking to adapt and thrive in a rapidly changing technology environment. That affects not just the city staff, but our community. And what that means is that ISD is being asked to do more and support a greater amount of technology than ever before. And so I want to speak to you a little bit about that tonight. But the reality is in 2017, if you can plug it into an electrical outlet, you probably want to connect it to a network. And that's the reality that we're dealing with. So to be able to continue to support all the technologies that are coming on board, as well as our existing technologies, we're focusing on two primary areas. The first is to become more efficient and effective in our processes. And the second is to prepare ourselves to be more flexible and agile for new technologies. So I'd just like to say a little bit about both of those things. First, to improve our processes, we know we have to do more with the same. And in order to do this, we're looking for ways to be more efficient and effective, with a particular focus on processes and implementing information technology best practices. So some examples of that, there is something called the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, or ITIL, which is a suite of best practices. And just in March, the entire ISD staff was trained in that suite of best practices. And I'm very proud to say that all the staff, 100% of the staff, passed that initial certification, which is quite an achievement. It's not easy to do. In addition to that, we've just implemented an IT change management process. In the IT world, change management means controlling updates, any changes or enhancements to systems to ensure that they achieve what you want them to do, which is better service, and that they don't break things. So we just initiated a citywide change management process that involves not just ISD employees, but all of the departments. We're in the process of implementing a project management process and function so that we have more standardized project management practices. We manage a couple hundred projects a year, and so we see that we can get a lot of efficiencies there. Training, one of the things in the budget that we asked for and one of the enhancements we asked for is some training dollars to support the continued professional development of our staff. We have very talented and smart staff. I think we can train them up so they can be ready for new technologies, and that's a very good investment. We're focused on helping the city become a more digital work environment, implementing collaborative technologies as well as digital signature technologies. We're supporting the efforts to become a paperless work environment, which should coincide with the CSB building, the City Services building, and also that helps with our sustainability goal. So those are some of the things that we're doing with existing processes. Getting ready for some new technologies, we're focused on data. We established an ISD team to focus on data and how we can better use our extensive data resources to support data-driven governance. We're focusing on the identification, creation, and implementation of tools that will allow us to engage in rich data visualization and analysis, and to apply that analysis in the service of better governance and applications to support that governance. We're looking to support smart technologies. You may have heard about the Internet of Things. These are devices, sensors that can be embedded in any physical thing, or they can be connected to a network, and that can help us gather more data. We're also looking at smart networks that might support autonomous vehicle networks or whatever else might be coming down the line as far as outdoor Wi-Fi networks. We're in a fortunate position because we have CityNet, our own fiber, very robust network that allows us to take full advantage of these technologies. And we're focused on mobility and collaboration. We're transitioning to a mobile-first computing environment in the city that'll support laptops and tablets as their primary work computers. And we're also focused on supporting the Total Workplace initiative to support the use of cloud-based productivity tools, collaboration tools, and to allow staff to have access to any of their work files or any documents that they need wherever they are, whether it's here or offsite. I just wanted to call out a couple of key projects that I think illustrate those things. One is the radio system upgrade, which I believe you heard Chiefs Seabrooks and Walker talk about yesterday. This was a project which replaced radios that were more than 20 years old, over 1,500 handsets for both police, fire, and public works. The infrastructure piece of this was handled in 3 months, and that really kind of set a record. As a matter of fact, our vendor, Motorola, said they'd never seen an infrastructure upgrade that quickly. Normally it takes 9 months, so we kind of set the new bar for that one. Hack the Beach. Last year we had the inaugural Hack the Beach competition. City Grows was the winner of that competition of 33 participants, and now the City Grows application is being used here in PCD. This year we had our inaugural event already, and we plan to have 3 or 4 more. We hope to expand participation from the 300 last year to well above that. And this year we're going to be focusing on supporting well-being and sustainability. Those will be the areas that we're going to have Hack the Beach focus on. City Wi-Fi. Our city Wi-Fi is about 8 years old now. Most of the infrastructure, it's kind of end of life. So we're looking at replacing all of that. Phase 1 will be over 60 access points that will be focused on the main parts of downtown, and we plan to continue to replace the entire network within the next year, year and a half. CityNet continues to thrive. We have 145 business customers. The Digital Inclusion Project has connected 10 affordable housing buildings, which could provide access or service to over 400 housing units. We have plans in 18 and 19 to connect another 27 affordable housing buildings. And then Youth Tech. Youth Tech is in its 6th year now. This year we're going to have 30 participants. There are over 110 alumni of the program, and 95% of those alumni have completed college or are attending college. So that's quite a success. Finally, I'd just like to call out, in addition to the training budget that we asked for, we are asking for the addition of some security staff to enhance our security footprint, as well as to make sure that we're able to protect the city as best as we can. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. That was also an excellent first presentation on a budget
Thank you.
hearing. We'll hear first from Councilmember McEwen.
You mentioned the digital inclusion program, which is near and dear. With the Trump FCC abandoning net neutrality as a regulatory requirement for corporate internet providers, our pilot broadband project and the ability to give residents unthrottled internet in the future becomes ever more important. And I know we're doing the pilot with the affordable housing buildings first, but has this pressure from the Trump administration taking away net neutrality caused us to reevaluate our timeline and perhaps accelerate getting city internet to residents' homes throughout the city?
Thank you for the question. Yes, net neutrality, it's disturbing what's going on there. And we're trying to monitor that and react to it. I think right now we're moving about as quickly as we can to extend CityNet out to residences. The issue, I think, really is we need to come up with a model that makes it viable to connect it to outside of the Digital Inclusion Project. And I know that we're looking at this right now and trying to think about how we can adapt to that environment.
I would hope that at the point where you have a plan that requires resources, you'll talk to us.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Councilmember Himmerich.
Hi.
Great report. So it's interesting, you talked about adding security positions, and my first question is about security and what challenges we face in terms of security, and as it evolves so quickly, the threats to security, what your plans are for protecting us against that.
Sure. I think there's 4 main things we can focus on right now as far as security goes. The first is partnerships. We're looking to the region, to other cities, to other organizations to help share resources and be ready for attacks. For instance, the most recent ransomware attack, the WannaCry ransomware attack, we did reach out to some other cities and some other agencies and were helped with that. I think the second is technology. There are a whole host of security technologies that are available. We have some of them. We're looking at expanding and acquiring other ones. Artificial intelligence is very big in this field now, and so we'll be looking to bring on additional technologies for that. The third is training. You know, the weakest link in any security posture for an organization is the human. And so we recently completed a cybersecurity training for the city, which I'm happy to say a very high number, a very high percentage, so over 72% of the city took that and passed. And we'll continue to keep that training up.
I know I took it. I'm guessing we
Yeah,
all did it.
and you passed, right?
Yes, I think so.
And then the final piece of it is policy. Right now we're reviewing all of our administrative instructions and trying to put policies in place that will ensure that we have a safe computing environment. So those are really the four things we're focused on right now.
And so you talked about training and having people, and it's my understanding, and maybe this is not correct, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, that yours is one of the hardest departments to recruit for. Is that right?
I wouldn't know. Would that
Oh,
be
I
true, then?
forgot to ask that question. Ooh. I'm sorry. Well, thank goodness you're still here.
I know. Actually, it can be challenging. It sort of depends on which position it is, but definitely it's one where we at times have had challenges in getting enough adequate applicants and getting the kind of applicants that we're looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's my question. I mean, whether we have adequate resources to recruit who we really need to do the job.
Well, one of the things we are looking at in negotiating with one of our groups we're in negotiations with now is perhaps also looking at signing bonuses if needed for really hard to fill positions. And certainly IT positions would probably fall in that category so that we make sure that we're competitive and that also we can attract the right candidates.
And fine, this is my last question on this point, but it's occurred to me that as averse as we are to contracting, to using contractors for this, that it could be sometimes easier in this particular field to find what you need through contractors rather than hiring. And I wonder if that's true or not. I mean, I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
There's probably an operational issue with that. From an HR perspective, it can be just as difficult sometimes to find the right contract person, but certainly we have used contracted help when we are really having a difficult time until we make sure we find the right person. Even though this is a challenging area, we never settle. And so if need be, we've used contracted assistance at times.
And I was actually thinking of companies that specialize in not really an assistant, but using, as opposed to having employees having, but anyway, I'm not trying to do your job. I just wonder if that's a solution. Anyway.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Your predecessor, Jory, did such a great job dealing with the whole fiber piece for the business community. And I know he was starting to break into the residential piece. And I know he had some real high goals in terms of reaching, especially the Pico neighborhood, where a lot of those folks could use just a smart device without really even having any kind of a phone plan, payment plan, and have access to the internet. And I'm wondering where we're at with that.
Well, I think the biggest challenge with facilitating that is always the last 100 feet.
Right.
So, our fiber is pretty extensive. We have an excellent network, but it's always connecting that fiber to the building that is the challenge. And those last 100 feet can cost in the thousands. So that's the challenge about making that model work. I haven't had any specific conversations around telephony or anything related to that, but I can go back and speak to my staff and see where we are with that. But the real challenge is around just getting that connection to any building. And it's sometimes far too expensive for us to do that, to be able to get into a building. It's just cost prohibitive.
But I thought he was looking at like using our lighting, for example, our lamp posts, or light posts, to use like routers, so they would have access
for Wi-Fi.
For Wi-Fi.
So those are things that we are continuing to talk to. We're talking to a number of companies about that, expanding that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember O'Day.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering if you could translate our budget into Bitcoin. Just kidding.
I could, but then I would probably be on the dark web.
Right.
You wouldn't want me here.
Right. You've been here long enough now to know that our community has a vibrant tech community,
Yes.
And one that's really growing. I've kind of been impressed with some of the companies that I've been meeting lately that are very startup stage with some cool ideas. And do you see a role for your department engaging with some of these companies in the community, helping to identify ways that we can leverage new technologies, new ideas, where we can provide a platform where we might be able to get a solution that helps to also act as an economic development engine for our community. Those kinds of strategies. Have you thought
Absolutely.
about those?
And that's one of the things that excited me and drew me to this job. And that's really what Hack the Beach is attempting to do. Look, I'll never have enough employees to be able to do everything I want to do, but we have such a vibrant community around here that are very talented individuals. And if we can open up our data and challenge them to help work with us to develop applications or analyze it, we're going to get much more out of that than I would by hiring another 50 people. And so Hack the Beach is an attempt at starting to create those connections. I have other ideas which I'm looking at and I'm trying to get going. The idea of an incubator space, perhaps. But I believe that I don't want Hack the Beach to just be a one-time contest. I want it to be a continual series of engagements so that we have a place for the community to come to, that they become interested in what's going on in the city, that they identify their problems. Because, look, I think I have an idea what all their problems are, but they're much better at it than identifying their problems than perhaps I'm going to be. And then also coming up with solutions. I mean, these are very talented, quick, agile individuals, and that's what we're trying to adapt to. We're trying to meet them in that space as well. So it's absolutely a place that I want to focus on.
Does that do it for you?
That does it for me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. This is information services, so we needed some more information.
That was information, yes.
We definitely don't suffer from net neutrality issues on the dais. So I'm just struck by the fact that your revenues are so much in excess of expenditures. Is that primarily because of the dollars you draw from the access to our dark fiber network from businesses, or why is that?
Well, and this is where Oscar can help me out here if I get in trouble. The 2.1 is from the CityNet. Those are the revenues from CityNet.
So that's the dark fiber.
That's dark fiber and lit fiber, any of their services.
All right, all that stuff.
So they have dark fiber
I'm
customers
a
as
Luddite,
well.
so it's
right.
like fiber. Let's just
So
call it fiber.
basically, lit fiber is providing you with the service. Dark fiber is basically connecting you, and you take care of everything else. It's your dedicated fiber, more or less. The 2.3 is from the the computer equipment replacement fund, which is what funds most of our computer replacements throughout the city. So that's an ongoing fund, 4-year cycle for.
So it's
for
sort of like
computers.
the sinking fund we have for vehicle replacement.
More or less, yeah. So did I explain your?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I just want to reiterate what Councilmember McEwen and Vasquez said, that I think we're all very interested in getting that Wi-Fi service out to compete with the private companies as fast as possible. And I understand there's a lot of challenges, but I just think that's a great thing we could do for our city, and it's be terrific for our youth in particular, and as we are trying to achieve that Learn and Thrive goal, that access to that Wi-Fi network would be really critical. So thank you for all your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We will move on to Community and Cultural Services. Welcome, Ms. Ginsburg.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. CCS's work plan is focused on enriching the lives of the community through a wealth of programs and services, and through stewardship of Santa Monica's parks, beach, cultural, and recreational amenities. Thank you. Our work aligns with the city's framework in the areas of community, place and planet, learning, and health. Our departmental operating budget is $37.5 million, with revenues of $5.7 million in the general fund and $17.4 million in other funds, mostly the beach fund. CCS has 166.9 full-time equivalent staff in 4 divisions. Many of the staff are here this evening, consisting of administration and planning, cultural affairs, human services, and community recreation. The proposed CCS budget includes a 20% expansion in child care subsidies this year in the amount of $173,500 to support 10 additional participants from low and moderate income Santa Monica families with children up to kindergarten age. These subsidies will be administered through the Human Services Grants Program to Connections for Children, which also already administers subsidies for this population. The budget also includes funding from the Beach Fund to supplement beach patrol deployment during early hours to address camping and other violations on the beach, and beach recreation leaders to provide information and monitor activities, particularly during the busy summer months at the volleyball courts, along the bike path, down at the water's edge. It's a pretty busy place and a big amount of acreage. During the next year, a big focus of our work will be geared to planning for the future. Building upon Santa Monica's participation in last year's countywide Parks Needs Assessment, we will be engaging the community on an update of the 1997 Parks and Recreation Master Plan, along with assessing the viability of a local bond measure in 2018. We will develop the city's first public art master plan, utilizing an artist team to engage the community where they are, and will plan for an update to the Creative Capital, the city's cultural plan that was adopted in 2007. We will also collaborate with our colleagues in Public Works and Planning to implement a variety of park and recreational capital projects, including advancing the plans for the 12-acre airport park expansion and the Beach Trail project. In the next year, with Public Works, we will complete the Clover Park restroom project and the North Beach playground project, and we will manage new public art commissions, including working with DTSM to implement the 18-month temporary rotating public art program at the Triangle on the Esplanade. Working with our colleagues and partners in the community, we will plan for and host Coast 2017 this fall. We will continue to take a leadership role in the strategic goals of Learn and Thrive and in regional efforts to address homelessness. In Learn and Thrive, we will continue our partnership with our colleagues from the library, which you heard from this evening, the school district, SMC, the service providers, and community leaders to advance the Kindergarten Readiness Campaign. In collaboration with our city colleagues, we will continue to work with county leaders and their staffs on multi-pronged efforts to address homelessness. Last evening, you inquired about our participation at the regional level on homelessness issues, and I wanted to give you a flavor of that. Assistant CCS Director Danielle Noble is the West Side COG representative on the Regional Homeless Advisory Committee, which is a body called for by both LA's and the county's plans to address homelessness. This committee is convened by LAHSA and United Way. City staff attend the Measure H program design planning meetings, and the Westside COG has a seat on the Measure H steering committee, which is filled by a staff person from ELP Advisors, the firm that staffs the COG. Human Services Administrator Maggie Willis is Santa Monica's representative on the Westside COG Homeless Working Group, and Danielle sits on this working group as well. This working group convenes monthly, and one of its roles is to advise ELP Advisors staff on the Westside City's perspective and needs regarding Measure H. Our department will focus on data collection and the development of metrics to measure our performance in the delivery of services to the community, both through the Human Services Grants Program and through direct service programs. And building on the background work prepared by the city's fee consultants, CCS will examine CREST and community recreation program fee adjustments within the framework of our adopted pricing policy, and we will include community engagement for future consideration by the council. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank the community of stakeholders and partners who are instrumental in working with us to leverage our resources. The CCS management team, who are all in the audience this evening, and a special thank you to all CCS staff who on a daily basis enrich the lives of the people they serve. Thank you. I'm available to answer any questions, and my managers will help me out if I
think you can handle the
Don't
question
know.
I have. If I recall correctly, you and I ran into each other one busy summer weekend at the beach.
We did.
And we had the collective experience of going, wow,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on here. And how much of it is legal and how much of it isn't.
Yes.
And
If you
so-
ask my staff, they don't like when I go down there.
Yeah. But what's the point of living here otherwise, right? I mean, certainly you should go to the beach. So could you just elaborate a bit on this beach patrol monitoring and what you hope to achieve?
Well, the beach patrol, which we already have done at the beach, really focuses on, I would say, antisocial behavior mostly, and illegal vending, sometimes surfing disputes that happen. And then the beach recreation leaders will know which permits have actually been issued for volleyball courts and that kind of thing. And we hope that with the addition of these volleyball leaders, we'll be able to manage some of particularly the volleyball conflicts that seem to be occurring.
All right. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Davis?
Thank you, Ms. Ginsburg. We, for the first time in the last year, have put downtown Santa Monica ambassadors in Tongva Park and Palisades Park. And so I have a two-pronged question, and one is, how is that working out? I mean, are we getting positive responses?
Very positive responses, both from a lot of the customers that we see. We've gotten emails, and DTSM has received emails that they feel like they've been welcomed into the park. They get information they need. They feel safe. They're bringing their kids back. Some people had stopped frequenting the playground at Tongva Park. That's not the case. They especially feel safe around the restrooms.
And so the second part question is, I've been getting some emails about Reed Park, saying you have spent millions of dollars, it's beautiful, but I don't go there for some of the same reasons people stopped going to Tongva Park. Have we given any thought to expanding that contract with the downtown Santa Monica to move ambassadors into Reed Park? I know it's technically not downtown, but neither is Tongva. So.
I think DTSM would be interested in talking with us about that. I think it's a budgeting issue, frankly. I know you received a letter from the Recreation and Parks Commission. They're very interested in it. We, in our department, we're making a extremely concerted effort to have activities in that park happening at least once a day on a daily basis. It is a big lift for us to do that. We are seeing the response to it, but I think having ambassadors would just be an enhancement.
And it might take some of the pressure off you to have to program it on a continual basis if there's somebody in the park on a continual
And
basis.
I think particularly around the restrooms there.
Right. And then the other question I have...
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, do you mind if I jump in with
Please.
a follow-up on Reed Park?
Jump in.
So, I brought this up when we did the permitting for trainers in our parks, that maybe we should look at, instead of, I think we had half the fee for Reed Park, but maybe waiving the fee and just requiring the business license and the insurance for the trainers to work there. That would allow the private sector to activate that park a bit.
So we've been piloting some ideas there with some of the existing trainers that we already have permitted by kind of encouraging them and maybe giving them a little break to do
money
it.
Talks, yeah.
But that's exactly what we want to look to, and perhaps come back to you to amend the permit requirements and the ordinance to look at Reed Park differently.
All right, thank you. Sorry to cut you off, but
No.
it was the same thought process.
Absolutely, thanks. Because I am changing gears just a little bit here. So certainly Councilmember McEwen talked about what the Trump administration is doing with the FCC. My concern is we've seen this new, I don't even know what you call it, the skinny budget. We've certainly seen the recent CBO report on what the so-called American Health Care Act will do. The budget basically kills a lot of programs, a lot of money, basically, that we use for very important things within the city. And obviously, we don't know what the final budget will look like. But are we at least sort of thinking about if there are holes in that social safety net, where might we be able to plug them a little bit and get a fair amount of return on our dollar? I've gotten emails from people, the West Side Food Bank, who's just, we're going to lose our funding. It's that sort of thing. So I'm just sort of curious if what your plans are in the next few months, 6 months, year, as this budget thing happens. You know, trying to figure out what we can do to make sure that people in Santa Monica are not, you know, broadsided by a budget that basically ignores them.
So there is $200,000 in human services, in CDBG funding that flows through the human services program that goes to LAFLA, WCIL, Chrysalis, and St. Joseph Center. So we're keeping an eye on that. We're also monitoring all of those issues and been engaging our nonprofit partners to learn from them as well as we can hopefully develop some solutions. I think within the reason for what Santa Monica can sustain and support.
Sure, I mean, and we're not suggesting anything tonight, but forewarned is forearmed. Let me ask you a little bit about LAFA and the Community Development Block Grants, in case people didn't know what CDBG stood for. So are we funding just that extra person through there, or is it all our funding for LAFLA going through CDBG?
What does that mean, Mark? A small amount? It's a very small amount.
It's a very small amount. Okay, so most of the funding for LAFLA is coming from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, good, because that would worry me, because that's a really important program here in town. And then I think the other issue I have is, obviously we are trying to be as conservative budget-wise as possible. Where do you see the biggest strain being? I mean, assuming, you know, you're obviously trying to be conservative, we're trying to, you know, live within our means as we should. But where do you see over the next year or two, as we talk about budgeting, sort of where the potential for, oops, if we had more money, this is what we would do?
Well, I certainly see, I think it's two-pronged. I think our spaces, our public spaces, are well used and yet not terribly well monitored, to be perfectly frank. I mean, we do the best job we can with our partners in the police department, the ambassador program, the activities that occur, but a lot goes on there that we don't see. And so I think with the volume of people that use Tongva Park, Palisades Park in particular, the beach, the downtown, the more that we could have monitors, that would be great. The other area is the homeless street team. We have one team working with 25 individuals, and we're testing it. It's a pilot, but I think we've seen already a lot of results from that. It's costly.
And that's only funded through half the year,
and that's funded through
right?
December. It's now funded through December in the proposed budget.
And
but
if we wanted to fund that the whole year, for example, don't have a heart attack, city manager, but what would that be, just out of curiosity?
Danielle, do you know what that is?
Probably more than this, right?
Yeah, annualize at $600,000.
So we would need another 300,000 if it's just
to
funded
extend
for
it to
6 months.
July,
Okay.
yes. But, you know, we are looking at our county partners to see if there are resources at the county to scale this. We are looking at our business community to see what they can help do. So, you know, I think it's going to take a village to get us through this, and, you know, leveraging those resources. And then I think the other piece is sort of the planning piece. We have a extensive appetite for new parks and new facilities that's never ending, and it takes a lot of people to make these projects happen and a lot of funding to make these projects happen and maintain them once they're in place.
All right, thank you, I appreciate that.
Councilmember Himmerich.
Hi, nice to see you. Great report. I wanted to follow on, first of all, I wanted to talk about the great results that you've gotten in terms of identifying the additional families who really need our help. And I think that that's a really significant effort that you've made in the last year. And I remember last year we talked about the fact that We thought there were such families and we could find them, and I want to congratulate you on finding them. And I hope that we continue this. And that's my first question. In terms of the need, that could be more of a need, I assume we're going to continue those efforts.
Yeah, the YRT program from 0 to 18, I think, is, and it's 3 pots. It's basically 0 to 5, and then the school age, and then the high school or teens. And that is funded through the Human Services Grants Program, and we'll be entering into the 3rd year of that program in July.
And it sounds to me as if there's a big focus, particularly for Vista Del Mar, on identifying in the younger, in the 0 to 5 age group, which I just heard an ad on the radio today about. Your brain grows more between 0 and 3 than it grows the entire rest of your life, and I certainly can vouch for that. So it seems to me that really is where we should be focusing on identifying people. So, yes.
And I think oftentimes we'll identify a family, and through that identification of the family, which may come from an older child, we identify the younger children in the family.
So,
it's
but
really
I really
the
want
whole
to
family.
Yeah, I want to congratulate you on that. I think it's so important. I also wanted to talk about the homeless outreach team. I actually just sort of randomly met somebody who was a friend of my daughter's, who was in social work school with her friend anyway, who's on that team. And it sounds like they are getting good results. And I asked this question last night, so let me ask it again. On the leverage issue, I mean, Measure H will be raising $650 million a year for homeless services. And if we're pioneering in these areas, what can we do to become a bigger part of that?
Well, I think our participation on all of these committees that I mentioned is a great step, because our voice is being heard. And if you know Danielle, she's not shy. She's going to speak up for Santa Monica, and also speak up for us in the context of the region as a whole. So we can't shoulder the burden of the region. We have to offer our assistance to our region, which we've done. We've done some trainings. There's probably more on the in the coming months to help train our colleagues in other parts of the county.
And in view of the increase in the amount of homelessness here, can we get funds? Because if we can stop it before it becomes an epidemic, I mean, what I wonder is this how we ought to be, you know, when we discussed yesterday the idea of leveraging local resources into regional resources. I mean, it just seems to me that the more we're leaders in this, the more we can do that.
So, for example, we're working with Councilmember Bonin in LA in Venice to offer our partnership with him on a couple of his housing projects there, and again with our county supervisor and her staff, and you know, it's the need is very great. And so yes, we want to get our piece of the pie, so to speak, and we want to help leverage it both inside the city but also outside the city.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ginsburg. I don't see any other questions. And we will wrap up with finance. And before we start with that, just for those members of the public who came to speak, we did start at 5:30 this evening, so we heard from those people, pulled chits at that time, but after we're done with the finance report, we'll then have another opportunity for public input. So hang tight. Welcome.
Thank you. The Finance Department provides a full range of fiscal planning, reporting, and support services, as well as risk management. We're proposing a budget of $20.4 million in fiscal year 17-18, broken down between the general fund and the risk management operations. Our revenue division is responsible for the collection of $265 million in tax and other revenues, and we collect another $31 million from our internal customers to fund our workers' compensation and liability self-insurance funds. Finance activities contribute predominantly to the governance outcome of our framework, but the work that we do in budgeting and reporting helps to foster an engaged and connected community. And our efforts to expand procurement solicitations to local and disadvantaged vendors, as well as the work that we are doing to monitor our minimum wage rollout in the city of Santa Monica, are helping to move the dial on economic opportunity. Within this budget, we're proposing to add a full-time position in our procurement unit using existing funds. The position will give us the bandwidth to take on cost-saving initiatives, such as developing cooperative bidding partnerships and coalitions that will expand competition in our sustainable procurement. They'll also increase the effectiveness of contract negotiations and management and enhance strategic planning and training throughout the city in the areas of procurement. Over the next year, in addition to our ongoing work, we'll be working on a number of significant projects. The finance team will complete the very complicated tasks of transitioning to a new ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System, which is our financial and payroll system that we're working on with HR and ISD, a new risk management system, and we're beginning a new banking relationship once we complete our RFP process, because as you know, we took your direction and have divested from Wells Fargo. We'll also continue to monitor the city's minimum wage law, as I mentioned. The implementation of the July 1st actually brings the law to businesses under 26 employees. So we are very much in the mode of getting information out to the rest of our businesses. Starting next month, we'll be supporting the Audit Subcommittee and the Citizens Ad Hoc Committee's review of the city's compensation structure and methodology, and we're expecting the city's internal auditor to have a final report in January of 2018. This effort will be in addition to the work that's included in our annual internal audit work plan, where we work with Moss Adams, our contracted internal auditor. And through the work plan, we do our best to mitigate risks throughout the city. We'll also be working on a number of financings, from the upcoming lease revenue bond for the city services building to the analysis and preparation for a park general obligation bond that we're working on with CNCS, as well as a financing analysis for the city yards modernization program, a project in the second year of our biannual budget cycle. And we'll continue our work to find ways to save costs when it comes to retirement contributions and workers' compensation. We're working on a number of initiatives to determine the most cost-effective means to contain, or the most effective means to contain costs in both those areas, and we'll report back to Council on our progress as we get there. And that concludes my presentation, if you have any questions.
Councilmember McEwen has a question to start things off.
Yesterday, when you did the general introduction to the budget, I recall you projected some phenomenal increases in employee health care costs. Was it 8% per year?
8%, yes.
And that's compounded year after year.
Yes, it is.
Council members Himmelrich and Vasquez and I spent the weekend at a convention where it became evident that, at least among the faithful of one political party in California, single-payer health care is an even bigger issue than it used to be. On Monday, the Senate Appropriations Committee for the California Senate published their evaluation of the bill that's currently before the legislature, saying that the total cost would be $400 billion. But that didn't really account for the fact that much of that health care cost is coming out of taxpayers' pockets now through governments and other benefit programs. UCLA has a study out that says that more than 70% of the healthcare spending in California is actually coming through state and local government, which is money taxpayers would save. As you know, about 7 years ago, I asked us to calculate how much we would save on employee health care under single payer. We got the number at that time. With this budget cycle back in February, I asked if we could do that again. When do you think we'll have a number? Because I think we have an important role to play in this debate over single-payer health care for the state of California. Santa Monica can be leaders here, but we need to have a story to tell.
So we're working on that analysis. We hope to get it to you hopefully in the next month.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great, because this is a hot issue in the state right now. Thank you.
Councilmember Vasquez.
I was glad to hear that you're moving forward with the RFP. What's the timeline on the the Wells Fargo, now that we divested, and now you got it out on the street, right?
Yeah, so it's out on the street, and our contract with Wells Fargo ends next March. So we are hoping to be able to switch over by next March. I think that we're looking at RFPs. Probably we'll hopefully make a selection around the early fall, and then move to the transition takes about 6 months. Proposals are due at the end of June.
At the end of June. Okay. And then you also mentioned the city yards. What's the timeline on that?
You know, I think that it's it's next year sometime. I think it's about 18 months from now, but I can't, would be a question more for the Public Works Director on the exact timeline. But I believe that we were looking at, if we were to do if we had to do a financing, it would be about 18 months after the one that we're doing right now. So that would be 18 months from now.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hemorich.
Hi. So first of all, I want to make it clear that I think you did a fantastic job on the budget, and I've had the great opportunity to work pretty closely with you in connection with the audit committee, and what you don't say and what I will say is that since we started the audit subcommittee and since we've been meeting regularly, we've cleared off most of the exceptions that were laid out by Moss Adams, and that so much progress has been made, and I really appreciate everything that you do about that. On the healthcare issue, I do want to say that in case anybody on staff doesn't get what great healthcare the city has, I do, because I have insurance both through my husband's private law firm and through the city, and my city insurance is so superior to the insurance that we buy through the law firm, which is basically the top tier of their insurance as well, that I switched my kids over to the city insurance. So I really do think it's an unbelievable benefit that we provide the staff, and it is really far superior to the kind of insurance that anybody has anywhere else in this country. So I want to congratulate you on that too. So now going forward with the new compensation subcommittee and with the audit subcommittee, do you believe that we'll be able to do it within the constraints of your current budget?
So we are looking at potentially increasing the budget. We would be doing it either as part of final changes, which is part of the June 27th report, or at year end. We're going to wait and see how we're doing in terms of savings. Otherwise, I will be contributing money out of our expenditure control budget for that.
I thought you were going to say out of my personal budget.
No. The finance department's expenditure control budget, which is.
So now I have one other question, and this is something that I've wondered about. So we have our general reserve or contingency fund that is 15%. And does each of the other funds have also a 15%
No,
reserve?
they don't have the same type of restrictions that the general fund has. However, they all have some type of reserve. Some of our funds, our enterprise funds, have different types of reserves. They have rate stabilization reserves and CIP reserves, so that in case something happens, something catastrophic, they have the money. So in a sense, a lot of our enterprise funds, our rate-based funds, do have some kind of reserve that's in our policies.
Thanks. And within the departmental budgets, do we have reserves in those? I mean, do we have contingencies in those, or they, do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, our departmental budgets are within the general fund.
Yes.
So no, the budgets are what we expect the spending to be. If there are savings at the end of the year, it goes back into the general fund.
So they don't roll over?
Based on our expenditure control budgeting that was adopted several years ago, what we're doing is the department, as an incentive for the departments to try to save some money, the department is able to keep a third of its supplies and expenses savings, not its salary savings. And then the general fund takes on the rest. And so that's when I'm talking about having money. And so that's, people do access that money a bit to take care of projects that would otherwise have to go against revenues. For example, the police department a couple years ago used that money for its mobile command unit.
And the CIP funds, do we have reserves on those as well?
No, they are, again, if they're in the general fund, the reserves are within the general fund. But CIPs take a few years to spend. I can budget in the first year for a CIP that takes 3 years to build. And so what we do is the leftover, the balance every year hits our fund balance for, 24 hours basically, and then we roll it over into the next year. So in a sense, we do have the reserves left over each year. They hit our reserves and then they get reappropriated.
Great, thank you very much.
That looks like it, so thank you very much for your presentation. Well, Councilmember McEwen just jumped up.
I just noticed something. I just read that the Government Finance Officers Association has just acknowledged our budget preparation as excellence in its field. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I believe that was for our CAFR. Was it the latest one? So that was our comprehensive annual financial report. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Had I known, I would have prepared a trophy for you as well. But
I don't know what the figure would have been. I do want to acknowledge and thank the work of everyone in the finance department, especially our budget staff that's been sitting in the front row. And I have to say that 3 out of the 6 people that are sitting in the front row, this is their first budget, and I think they did a fantastic job.
absolutely, thank you. Job well done. All right, well, that concludes our department presentations. We're now going to hear from the public. So I'll call some names. You could please line up when you hear your name called over against that wall. Yao Katagiri, Javier Beltran, Betsy Haichu, and Aaron McGinnis. Welcome, Ms. Katagiri.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, council members. I just wanted to make a simple endorsement and thanks, especially thanks to the city staff for the recommendation of the supplemental funding for the child care subsidies for the city of Santa Monica. As you heard, I think earlier this evening from Family Services about the people who have benefited so far from the Vulnerable Families effort. Amongst the needs that were identified for almost all of those families over the last year, it's housing, it's childcare, and it's jobs. And as you know, the existing subsidy program that has been administered by Connections for Children for many, many years did not have sufficient funds to take care of the incremental number of clients coming out of the Vulnerable Families program. And so some of them had to be waitlisted towards the end of last calendar year. And that was very unfortunate. And we brought to the attention of the council this shortfall last January during the mid-year budget hearings. And after a lot of hard work by the staff and a lot of listening by you, you were able to come out with this recommendation for the budget for next year of providing some additional incremental support for the child care subsidy program. And with both of my hats, one being the Child Care and Early Education Task Force and the other being president of the Board of Connections for Children, I just wanted to thank you and to promise you from Connections that we will steward those funds very carefully. Some people have said, well, the equivalent of 10 additional children doesn't seem like enough. But I can assure you that because of the fact that that number was derived from estimating 10 children an average amount for a full year, they're all not going to arrive on July 1st. They have different needs, and so we'll make sure it spreads out.
All right, don't go anywhere. We have some questions.
Oh,
First,
sure.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Thank you, Ms. Katagiri. So, in a perfect world, we would have unlimited amounts of funds. If we had unlimited funds, how much more would you need to fund all the children that you've identified thus far?
Well, we right now, as I alluded to, there's this numbers crunching is a little complicated because you have families that are identified at different times of the year, and they clear the rolls at different times of the year. They also have different needs. Some of them may not need full day. Some of them may want half day, and so forth. So the average for one child for the full year can actually be spread out over several families. So that's part of it. I think right now we've had in the program so far this year approximately, I think it's 55 families out of that program, not the other Santa Monica families that have already been helped and are already in the program through other referrals. But and right now I believe the waiting list is only about 7 or 8 more. But of course, new families, the case management process of family services is continuing. Their program continues. So their outreach, their processing of new families will continue through the year. So the answer is not a single number. It's the families will come and go, and new families will take their place. I will say also that we've all discussed the budget constraints that you all face, and we're painfully aware of the limitations on the city budget. And we have started the process of talking about what are some alternatives for private philanthropy to begin to supplement scholarships for low-income families for childcare. And then I would also, just as an example, say that we have other partners in the community that have really been stepping up. Just as an example, a shout out to Agatha Perez and the Hillendale Family Learning Center, who took one of the families from the wait list and accommodated it through their own fundraising for their own scholarship program. So, others will do that hopefully as we go along.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Vasquez has a question.
Actually, Betsy Heichu, I think, in her little handout answered most of my questions,
okay.
but except for the one you mentioned that you had a wait list of those folks that were on this wait list. Where do you know the zip codes they were from by any chance?
Well, overall in the program, let me refer to my notes. So I think they are proportional to the ones that are in the program. We have 56% of the Santa Monica subsidy children are in the 90404.
Yeah, I got it here.
Yeah, okay.
I was asking more for those that were on that wait list.
I don't know the specific details of the individual families that are still on the wait list.
And what zip?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would assume most of them are from 90404.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next up is Javier Beltran.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Javier Beltran, the managing attorney at the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles Santa Monica office. And I would like to thank you on behalf of Legal Aid for supporting and funding the CCSM our Legal Aid office through the CCS umbrella. And kind of want to explain to you a little bit of what the work that we do at the Santa Monica office and how that support goes a long way in helping the most vulnerable folks in Santa Monica. Approximately about 1,000 or so Santa Monica households we assist through our general office and domestic violence clinic. We assist on various issues as well, including consumer protection, government benefits, fair housing, and family law matters. Also, at the request of city officials, we provide legal advice and information on immigration issues in light of federal government's change on immigration policy, which has caused confusion among many people in our community. Also, however, the overwhelming demand from Santa Monica residents still tends to go towards housing and domestic violence. We see probably 70% of our intake that we have at our office is regarding housing, which is eviction defense, and also Section 8 retention, subsidized housing, landlord-tenant issues. And this is especially alarming considering the lack of affordable housing in Southern California, and so we're there to protect those folks. And this year we also are more aggressively refocusing our outreach efforts in Santa Monica to provide greater accessibility to the Santa Monica community. And for example, we're providing night clinics twice a week, and we're also providing intake services once a month at the Santa Monica Farmers Market at Virginia Park. We also provide intake for elderly folks at Wise and Healthy Living, and also through our new collaborative through St. John.
From one of my colleagues.
Well, I also want to note, and maybe you can tell us a little more about your efforts to work with the cities on issues such as the source of income ordinance that was challenged, and on tenant harassment cases.
So we worked closely with the city, and we actually intervened on on protecting residents with Section 8 as part of the ordinance that was created here in city of Santa Monica. And also we've put in input as well through the city of Los Angeles, which are looking to do similar enactments regarding landlord harassment. And so we're intricately involved with the city attorney, with Santa Monica city attorney with that.
And what was the result of the source of income?
We were able to, it was upheld by the court, and then now we're currently enforcing it. Well, city attorney is currently enforcing that.
And it's my understanding that they haven't, that they filed a notice of appeal but haven't filed on it. Is that right?
They have not officially filed it. Yes, that's correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Haichu.
Sorry that Irene Zevi cannot join me tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of both of us, and you already have in front of you something that describes the request and the desire that we have, and that I think you share, for expanding the number of children served in child care through the Early Wellbeing Project. It is truly an example of something that this city has wanted to do for a long time, which is to serve the very neediest families, and to do whatever it takes to try to help them get on their feet and into jobs. And childcare is the greatest job creator, because without childcare, you really can't get a job and keep it. So we're very grateful to the city for your long-term commitment to this issue. And thank you for your comments and your support. We hope you will support these 10 families in getting childcare. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. McGinnis, before you come up, I'm going to call a couple more names to speak after you. Bruce Rankin and John Masseri. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Erin McGinnis, and I am Vice President of Clinical Programs at St. Joseph Center. We deeply appreciate the City of Santa Monica's commitment to helping some of our community's most vulnerable members and to ending homelessness. We have been one of the city's partners in the Santa Monica Chronic Homeless Project for 10 years. And in that time, we have seen the lives of so many improve through housing services, case management, mental health, and so much more. We also appreciate the city's commitment to those in need through our other key programs that we also partner on, such as Family Self-Sufficiency Program and the Santa Monica Youth Resource Team 2.0. These initiatives all make Santa Monica a more livable and more inclusive city. As homelessness continues to rise across LA County due primarily to a lack of affordable housing, every community and every service provider feels the impact. Now is the time for all cities to align with the county's 47 strategies that will be funded through Measure H dollars. These strategies embody a range of best practices that will help us end homelessness regionally once and for all. Increased investments in affordable housing, interim housing, and rapid rehousing in particular are essential to our shared efforts to solve homelessness. We also strongly endorse the cost of living adjustment. As a hiring manager, I know firsthand how important it is to ensure that our valued employees earn a living wage and are compensated fairly based on the cost of living in our communities. Thank you so much for your longtime partnership and your continued commitment to ending homelessness and combating poverty in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Rankin.
I'm Bruce Rankin. I'm Executive Director of Westside Food Bank. I've been the director since 1989 here in Santa Monica. And I'm also a board officer of the Westside Coalition on Housing, Hunger, and Health. At the food bank, we supply food to about 20 agencies that do food assistance programs in Santa Monica. And this year we have special goals to eliminate food insecurity among college students and among vets. And in that vein, we've started in this last year food pantries at Santa Monica College and at the VA campus. I'm mainly here to thank you for the solid and thoughtful support that this city gives to social service agencies, especially in light of what we've learned from the president's budget and the great need that will continue to exist among agencies for support from this city. I guess we can call that budget an aspirational document, but I want to call your attention to two specific things that will happen. One that affects federal government funding to agencies, and the other that affects the society's social safety net. The first thing is that we, as most of the agencies in Santa Monica, receive money from the Emergency Food and Shelter Program. This year it's being cut 18% from last year, and with the move from EFSP moving out of the Federal Emergency Management Authority, it's likely to be cut even more in subsequent years. And if anybody has a question, I can answer the other point I was going to make.
I believe that Council Member Himmerich is prepared to throw you a lifeline.
Okay.
And what is the second area?
So, what is the second area? So it's in terms of food stamps, or what officially in California is emergency food. Is CalFresh. CalFresh is likely to, in fact, without heroic efforts to make a change, a waiver that's existed in California will end at the end of the 2018 federal budget year. And that means that individuals who are receiving, without dependents, who are receiving food stamps will only be able to receive them for 3 months out of every 3 years. We estimate that will affect, at that point, about 1,500 housed residents of Santa Monica that they'll lose CalFresh.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Not cheery, but worth knowing about. Mr. Masseri.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. John Masseri with the People Concerned, formerly OPCC. I'm here to really underscore some of the comments that my colleagues have already made and to express our appreciation for the city's continued and longstanding support of the Human Services Division and the support of social service agencies. I think we can all agree that the next 4 years are not going to be boom times for poor and vulnerable people. And those of us working in the trenches every day see this manifest itself in a variety of ways. And so the support that comes from the city directly to organizations working on the front lines is critical to really hold the line to the best of our abilities against the tsunami of perpetuating human suffering and misery. So I just want to say thank you for your commitment. I've had the privilege of working in this community for 18 years. It is unlike any place else that we work in the county, in that there have been long and deep investments. And I will tell you that a lot of the work that has, if you look at the strategies that the county's Measure H Oversight Committee and the best practices that have become standard of care in our sector, especially around homelessness, started right here in the city. They were incubated by programs that this city supported long before anybody was talking much about harm reduction, long before anybody was talking about integrated mobile health teams or wraparound services in permanent supportive housing. That work grew out of work that was started here in the city and supported by the city. So I commend you for that, and we are happy to stand with you and be your partner in this work. Thank you.
Thank you. So, council members, it's matter of the budget study session is now before us. We have received the financial status update and the presentations on the proposed biennial budget. That leaves two matters left to us. I suggest we hopefully quickly dispatch with providing direction to staff on the recommendations of the fee study report and the proposed beach parking rates. I personally found them, I won't say laudable, but just the right thing. If anybody has any objections about the beach parking rates or the fee study report, they should raise them now. If not, we'll move on to the meatier subjects. All right, I think you can consider, got the check sign on that one. All right, now we want to talk and provide direction on the proposed budget and the capital improvement programs. And Councilmember McEwen will lead us off.
Well, I just want to say, as a vegetarian, I will not be moving on to the meatier subjects. Thank you. I actually think the staff did a great presentation, and that the budget is pretty much where it needs to be. I'm sure we'll be getting further input from people between now and the adoption in late June, but I would have no further direction to give at this time.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis.
Well, I do want to thank everyone. I think anytime you're given the task of maintenance of effort and really trying to, in our case, as some of the speakers have said, maintaining effort is really quite meaningful. Nevertheless, I do think there are a couple of things I'd like staff to consider between now and the time the budget comes back to us at the end of June. And some of them are not direction, go do this or add this. I'm trying to be circumspect and respect the city manager's desire to keep ourselves in check. But the first one that we didn't really talk about was the issue of having a person dedicated to Vision Zero. Now, I understand that that is something we may see when the budget comes back to us, but I thought it was important because the community has shown great interest in it to mention that tonight. And I think I look forward to seeing some provision for that in the budget. As you may have been able to tell from my questions about well-being, I think the well-being project is wonderful. I love being a city of well-being, but I really want to make sure as we move through the next couple of years, we move from data collection to action. As I said, I think it's great to collect data, but then what do we do with it? And, I don't have any specific suggestions, and I'm not necessarily suggesting any new programs, but I do think that I always tell people that cities are conservative, small c entities. We don't move very quickly. It's, the proverbial turning of the Titanic. And so when we're thinking about maybe doing something a year or two down the road, we need to start thinking about it today. And so that's something I'd like to start thinking about is as we move through this year's budget, what are we going to do with all this wonderful and illuminating and important data that we're collecting through the well-being efforts we're making? And I guess here's where I want to drop a footnote that actually applies to a number of things across the board, but I think are important, is that, and child care, maybe coming up through as a child care advocate, is one of the issues with child care has always been that there's a lack of boldness. It's if I take money from here and give it to childcare, then somebody's ox gets gored. But investing the money in childcare and taking care of our youngest residents pays off so much in the long run. But it takes the courage to maybe say, I have to move some money from X pot of money to childcare to do that. You'll ultimately save money, but if you never have the courage or the boldness to do that, then you constantly fight the battle over and over again. And so I'm hoping that as we have a conservative budget and we're trying to be financially prudent, nevertheless, we look for opportunities to be bold across all the departments. I single out childcare because that happens to be the one that I know. But across all our departments to maybe make some investments that might seem like a heavy lift in the beginning, but at the end of the day will pay off in ways we can only imagine or hope for at the end of the day. So while we are maintaining effort, I think we should never lose our vision for trying to do more, do different, do better. But boldness, I think, is really the key. We do so many things so well, and I would just hate to see us get sort of in the hamster wheel, if you will, of, well, this is the way we've always done it. A couple of specific issues that I just want to raise is I have been getting a number of people when they see me in the grocery store giving me a call about Reed Park. I think because when it opened, people thought it was just wonderful, that the renovations there were spectacular. People really want to use it. And this may be an instance where maybe programming, which is, I know, very taxing on our staff, we're not really set up to be programmers, as it were. And maybe if some of, maybe it is as simple as thinking about expanding the ambassadors into the park and maybe doing a little less programming, but having just a little more presence. So I'd like to think about that as one of those make the investment here and save some money on the back end kind of ideas. And the final thing I think I want to talk about is, again, perhaps looking for money for the homeless street team. I don't think there's anybody in this community who hasn't heard from somebody else. I'm confident all my colleagues have. And I think it's just the homeless issue, and it's not even a matter of numbers. It is quite honestly just a change in the nature of our homeless population. And so I think something that seems to be getting good results, I would hate to see us go, well, that was a pilot and now it's over and it did really well, but now we don't have money to continue doing it. So I think that may be one of those bold things. And I understand there may be trade-offs here, and I certainly welcome inputs as to what those trade-offs may be to try and fund something like that throughout the entire fiscal year. But I think that it's important that we address these issues, and I really want to compliment the manager and the staff and everyone for doing the budget every year. You look at this huge notebook, and it's obviously a tremendous time-consuming task, and I think it's every year I'm very impressed with what we're doing and what we can do. And I just look forward to passing a budget at the end of June. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Himmelrich.
So I agree with everything that Councilmember Davis said, but I want to focus on maybe a little bit different issue, and that is that I've had some discussion with the city manager, and I don't know where this will go, but for the next 4 years in any event, our biggest problem is going to be, in my view, our safety net and making sure that people aren't falling between the cracks. And we have some capital items in the budget that, if they could be financed or funded in different ways, could free up general fund monies, I think, to make sure that we have enough to provide for people so that they don't fall between the cracks. And to the extent that this is at all possible, and to the extent that it's all possible that we free up today's money to take care of today's problems and not tomorrow's problems, I would really love to see that happen. I know it's a big overview, but I can say that it's looming over all of us, and I don't think any of us will be immune from it, whether it be CalFresh or CalWorks or any of these social programs that have kept people from becoming the homeless people, you know, the additional 26% we're seeing now, or in other desperate straits. And I just want to say that to the extent possible, I would love to see us free up as much of today's money to use for today's needs as we can. So, thank you.
Councilmember Vasquez.
I agree with the comments of both of my colleagues, but I'd like to single out two issues that I hope we could include, or that it comes back to us, and it's more with the capital improvement projects, which are one-time expenditures. For one, Los Amigos, and I think I've had this conversation with staff about it, and I understand it wasn't in the original plan to do hardscape between the dugouts and the bathrooms. And I think if we could look at that, revisit that, because as I was there just last weekend watching these kids play, while we don't get a whole lot of rain, but we do get rain, it gets real muddy there, and it's just unbearable for these folks that are on wheelchairs trying to get to the restroom. So I'm hoping we could look at that. And then the other one that I think I shared with our city manager when we did our bike ride around the cemetery at Woodlawn. If we could make sure we have sufficient funds to really dress that up all around it, because there's still some spots, especially on 17th Street. And I think part of it has to do with, you know, Santa Monica College is so successful and there's so many students walking around it, especially as they're parking their cars, and they're kind of trashing that area. And I think we could do a better job. Thanks.
Councilmember O'Connor.
Well, you don't know, you mean the wear and tear from their walking around, not that they're, or are they throwing things?
Well, for example, you know.
But you mean the wear and tear? You're not saying that
wear and tear, and then to be a little bit more specific, for example, we have trash cans out there now that we put out there. It's a part of it is maintenance, and it's not like these people are deliberately throwing it. It's just that the trash cans are full, so we may need to increase, you know, maybe add a couple of them to it. But then just look at the hardscape or the landscaping around the cemetery. I think we can do a better job as landlords to dress it up a little bit.
Any further direction? Seeing none, thank you very much for 2 nights of presentations, particularly for the Finance Department, who had to be here for both nights. Great work. And we will look forward to seeing the finalized budget in your report for June 27th. Oh, City Manager wants to say something.
Simply, Mayor and members of the council, to acknowledge the feedback. We appreciate it. It's the charter responsibility of the city manager to prepare a budget, and of course it's the city council's job to approve and finalize the budget. So we welcome your feedback. The most important thing, which I think every one of you has acknowledged, which we deeply appreciate, is that this year we're not talking about can we add, it's can we trade. And those are not easy, but in a budget of $650 million, there are trade-offs. And so we will come back to you in 6 weeks with what we hope will be some constructive and responsible trade-offs, so we can stay within our budget and still address the council's priorities.
Councilmember O'Connor.
Right, and I was going to add that you prepare the budget based on the council priorities and input.
All right. Now we conclude item 4A. Thank you once again. And if the clerk could call item 8A, please.
Sure. Item 8A, airport runway shortening options, and you have 13 requests to speak.
And we'll begin with the staff report. While we're waiting on the staff report, might be a good time for me to get the chits for this item. Oh, God, they were. Where did they come from? All right. No. Snuck them up on me.
Are you going to give this to us?
While we're having this interstitial changing of staffing, I will remind everybody, including my council colleagues, that we have our annual Memorial Day observance at Woodlawn Cemetery at 11 a.m. on Memorial Day, and you're all invited to join the observance of our fallen war heroes.
Mr. Mayor,
Selzer, yes.
before we start the public staff report, the staff report on this item, just want to let you know that we are distributing a supplemental staff report that responds to a letter from the National Business Aviation Association that was received after the staff report was prepared and posted online. And copies of the supplemental staff report are available at the clerk's table as well.
Would you be able to give us a 1-minute summary of that supplemental report?
I could do that after the staff report,
All right,
if you wish.
thank you. All right, let's commence with the staff report. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight we are presenting the airport runway project options for your consideration. And staff recommendation is to proceed with option B, the center aligned option, and for council to deem this project categorically exempt from CEQA. As you already know, the city and the FAA entered into a consent decree on February 2nd of this year, and this agreement currently governs our airport and its operations. The consent decree provides for a reduction of the runway to 3,500 linear feet. The project team was commissioned to accomplish this, and that's why our team is here tonight, to present you with the options and to obtain direction for implementation. This is our general project timeline. We presented these options to the stakeholders on April 25th. We also presented them to the Airport Commission on May 2nd. At both public meetings, we recorded the public comments and questions. And tonight, after council provides us with direction, our plan is to proceed with the 60% design, develop a design build guaranteed maximum price, and return to the council to get your approval for the GMP and to enter into a design build contract with our consultants. After which we would complete the design, begin construction in September with a goal to complete the project in December of this year. These are the existing conditions at the airport. I'd like to use this moment here to familiarize yourselves with the pertinent components of the airport. So this highlighted area is the existing runway. It's 4,973 feet. This is the area where the airplanes are allowed to land and take off. The runway safety area, it's basically the surface surrounding the runway that helps reduce the risk of airplane damage during overshoot, undershoot, or excursions from the runway. And as you can see, the runway safety areas extend well beyond the airport property. The runway object-free area is an area of the airport that is basically clear of vertical obstructions, except for the navigational equipment. And again, you can see in this figure that the current runway object-free area extends beyond the airport property. And then finally, you have the runway protection zones. These are intended to enhance protection of people and property on the ground in case of airplane mishaps or crashes. So these are the design criteria that our team used to bring forth the most viable options. Obviously, front and center is an operational runway length of 3,500 linear feet. And for safety, we wanted to meet the FAA design standards. We wanted to ensure that the runway safety areas of 300 feet were provided for both ends, and that the runway object-free areas would be entirely located on airport property. And finally, we also wanted to make sure or ensure that any remaining existing infrastructure in the runway protection zones would be minimized. We also looked at other considerations, including air quality, noise, proximity of the runway to the air traffic control tower, and the existing airport facilities. We also looked at cost and schedule. Which brings us to the options that we're presenting to the council tonight. So what you're looking at is option A. It's the easterly aligned runway. It basically pushes the runway to the easterly end of the airport. This option places the airport nominally closer to the airport air traffic control tower and the airport facilities to the east. It provides new taxiways at the thresholds and the new taxiways midway along the runway. It also provides the standard 300-foot runway safety areas on both ends. And it also ensures that the runway object-free area is entirely on airport property. And this option also results in a reduction of infrastructure within the runway protection zone. Next, we have option B, which is the center-aligned runway option. This basically places the runway in the center, equidistant from the existing runway ends. Similar to option A, this option provides new taxiways into the thresholds and a new taxiway into the midway, roughly midway along the runway. This option also provides the standard runway safety areas of 300 feet on both ends, and also ensures that the runway object-free area is entirely on airport property. And this option also results in the least amount of existing infrastructure within the runway protection zones. This slide is provided just to provide you with a visual comparison of the two options. I'm going to urge the council not to try to read this slide here. It's a little busy. This is purely intended to provide a snapshot of the criteria that was used to bring forth these options and to be used to differentiate the two different options. The table was provided in the staff report. As I mentioned earlier, during the public meetings that we had, we recorded the public comments, and we also recorded the questions that were raised. So we wanted to go over the main themes of questions that were raised at both public meetings. So one of the questions that was asked was, will the unusable runway pavement be removed? Possible removal of pavement no longer needed for the airport with the shortened runway will be considered as a standalone, separate, and distinct project at the direction of the City Council. What enforcement and monitoring measures will be in place should pilots utilize the unusable runway pavement for arrival or departure? Excursions from the runway into the unusable pavement are violations of FAA regulations. As a part of the project, the city will enhance its ability to monitor, identify, and report violators to the FAA. Since the airport commission meeting, staff has already looked at new technologies to help augment our existing video systems so that we can enforce our ability to monitor the excursions. Has the FAA signed off on either option A or option B? The consent decree does not obligate the FAA to approve or reject any designs for runway shortening. However, we have presented both options to the FAA and no objections have been raised against either option. Are there any existing non-standard conditions at the Santa Monica Airport? Will options A or B remediate those non-standard conditions? There are two critical non-standard conditions at the Santa Monica Airport. Both options A and B would correct the runway safety areas and would correct the runway object-free areas. Is one option safer than the other? There are no substantial differences between the options, and as I mentioned earlier, both options correct the non-standard conditions that currently exist at the airport. Were displaced thresholds considered instead of relocated thresholds? No. Displaced thresholds are not consistent with the intent of the consent decree. The consent decree requires a 3,500-foot operational runway, and that's what we're providing with the relocated threshold. And just to explain the difference between a relocated threshold and a displaced threshold, what you see here is a relocated threshold. This allows airplanes to take off and land within the 3,500-foot runway, and this applies to the Santa Monica Airport. What you see here is a displaced threshold. This allows a plane to land within the 3,500-foot runway, but also allows a plane to take off from the areas that are outside of the 3,500-foot runway. And this is not applicable to Santa Monica. So here we are with staff's recommendations. As you can see, we looked at a number of criteria in bringing forth the most viable options for your consideration. Both options provide equal benefits in reducing adverse air quality and noise impacts due to the reduced operations and the change in the fleet mix. Both options move the runway closer to the control tower and majority of aircraft facilities in the east. Both options provide the standard runway safety areas and maintain the entire runway object-free areas within the airport property. Option B results in the least amount of existing infrastructure remaining in the runway protection zone. The air traffic control tower has advised our team that option B works best with their operations. And then consensus at both the stakeholders meeting and at the airport commission meeting determined that option B is the preferred option. Based on these considerations, staff recommends that the City Council selects option B and deems this project categorically exempt from CEQA. With that, our team would be happy to answer any questions.
Why don't we hear from Mr. Seltzer on this supplemental staff report before we get into any possible questions?
Just very briefly, the letter from the NBAA asserted that a 1985 report from the airport director previously considered the consequences of reducing runway length. And we just went through that report and made clear that the report's irrelevant to this consideration and involved a displaced threshold. It looked at it studied only the noise effects of a displaced threshold for landings existing on a 5,000-foot runway. We're dealing with a relocated 3,500 foot runway. It also found that there was no significant noise impacts or differences as a result of the threshold. So the report really doesn't stand for what it was asserted to, and I think our staff report speaks for itself.
Thank you. Well, seeing no questions, we will commence with the public input. Thank you for your report. And if you could, when I call your name, come up, the first speaker can come up to the microphone, the subsequent speakers can line up against this wall and be ready to speak. I would appreciate it. First we'll hear from Mindy Taylor Ross, then Roger Oland, I think it is. Sorry, I'm having trouble reading it. Jeff Thompson, John Fairweather, and Dave Hopkins. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, my name is Mindy Taylor Ross, and I live in the Penmar neighborhood of Venice, just a few blocks from SMO. Our community is very nice. We have a golf course and a beautiful park with tennis and basketball courts, baseball diamonds, and an area for children to play, which is also a daycare center for Wallgrove Elementary School. The problem is those community assets, the heart of the community, are a few blocks from the pollution, noise, and constant aggravation of SMO. Neighboring cities who shoulder the burden of SMO's toxic fallout, including Venice, Mar Vista, and West LA, have studied the negative impacts for decades, We have formed committees and worked with city officials who also advocate for closing SMO. Problem is, we have no say in operations in Santa Monica or at SMO. The airport is located on the border of our community, and we feel that we are forced to accept most of the negative impacts, especially with your abusive Fly Neighborly program. In the last 10 to 15 years, jet traffic has increased exponentially as your citizens sought relief in the form of Measure LC for local control and closure, which won a majority or 60% of the vote in 2014. Problem is, it was never implemented, or the airport would have been closed in 2015. The secret consent decree you worked out with the FAA that keeps the airport open for another 12 long years is simply unacceptable to a majority of the citizens in the region. You should be voting on and implementing additional ways to close SMO. However, we're here to shorten the runway, and I support the least nefarious option B. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger, is it Organ? Well, we'll let you pronounce it. How about that?
Oland.
Oland. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm from over at the Van Nuys Airport, and I thought I'd come over here, and I came over last night to sniff out what was going on about the airport. And I used to work here at Douglas in 1966, 67, and worked on a lot of, I think from number 55 to 255 DC-9s. And I was born in Santa Monica. I was raised in Sherman Oaks. And so I have a care about this, and we've been in aviation for 40 some years, my wife and myself and our business. And I see an option that's missing is using the airport for, I don't want to be treated like, what's his name, Lynn on the Dancing with the Stars, because it's probably something people don't want to hear. But if this airport it's an infrastructure that's built here that is worth a lot of money. And it's not undeveloped property like I've seen in some publications. It's really a developed property. And I know everybody's, the noise and the pollution is what one of the gripes is, or the gripes are. And but we've worked on big projects at Van Nuys. Some of them come in and they're there for 6 months, and they're producing work, you know, and putting people to work that are technically savvy. And you don't have anything like that. All I've heard last night and tonight is how you spend money, but you don't have any real income here at this area. I mean, I haven't heard anything that's real good. And I think we had 130 people working on this DC-3 modification we worked on from Wisconsin. And it was, I think, for 2.5 years. And it didn't fly for 2.5 years. 2 airplanes we did. And it was a real successful thing. It's an old DC-3. It's probably made right here. And those things land on dirt fields and so forth. So they're really a particular, they haven't replaced them with anything. Anyways, I think you ought to try another option. I got some ideas if anybody wants to talk about it. So I'd like to
Thank you.
put that out there. Thank you.
Mr. Thompson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and honorable members of City Council. My name is Jeff Thompson. I'm the LAX Community Liaison for Councilmember Mike Bonin, representing the west side of the City of Los Angeles. I've submitted a letter to the clerk that you should find associated to this, and I just wanted to highlight a couple key things since I realize I'm under the 2-minute clock. While it's true that the shortening of the main runway offers the surrounding community some benefit for reduced air traffic, noise, and pollution, and presumably enhances safety for pilots and residents in close proximity to the airstrip, merely reducing the impact should not be your standard. SMO has long disproportionately impacted the city of LA residents through what I believe is a concerted effort to shift noise and air pollution away from the city of Santa Monica. It's not simply enough to reduce the impacts that are disproportionately directed towards Los Angeles. They must be balanced so that Santa Monica is carrying its fair share as well. The city of Santa Monica is being presented with 2 options. Option A, which is really unacceptable for especially the folks in the Mar Vista area, since it's only a 438-foot reduction from the incoming jets that in some cases are passing less than 100 feet over constituents' homes in the area, and option B. But there were additional options that were considered early in the process that our office was just made aware of in the last few days. You recall in the presentation there was an easterly configuration and a centerline configuration. A westerly configuration was not even presented to the public. And it's for that reason that one of the reasons I'm here to ask that plan also be vetted in the public space and that we can have an opportunity to see what that plan is. The other thing I've come to ask for is asphalt removal is not part of this plan. So right now we're shortening the runway by December with paint. And so I'm asking that phase 2 be, that you initiate phase 2 as well and provide a timeline on when the asphalt can actually be shortened. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Fairweather.
Hi, my name's John Fairweather, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Airport to Park. I'd like to congratulate the staff and consultants on a very detailed plan. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into it. Airport to Park exists to ensure the conversion of the airport land into a great park as envisaged by Measure LC. And the initial 12 acres is well underway, thanks to council and staff, and hopefully will soon move to the construction. Airport to Park supports staff's recommendation of a centered 3,500-foot runway, and we're happy to see expected completion this year. But a restriped runway is essentially a wasted space and should only be temporary. We anticipate that the city will move swiftly to a second project to remove excess surface and begin planning the additional 30 acres or so thus freed up for park use. This land has a potential to not only become Santa Monica's largest park, but also provide much needed pedestrian and bike access to the initial 12-acre expansion, as well as alleviating traffic problems in the area by creating a cut-through to Bundy. Airport to Park is excited to see the huge progress so far and eagerly awaits in the new year beginning the next phase of planning once the restriping project is complete. Once again, Airport to Park would like to give our thanks to staff and city for your steadfast support in this essential transition. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on one second, Mr. Hopkins, while I call a few more names. After you will be Alice Ellis, Betsy Katz, Jacqueline Hamilton, and Alan Levinson. The floor is yours, Mr. Hopkins.
City Councillors, good evening. My name is Dave Hopkins, Ocean Park resident, Vice President of the Santa Monica Airport Association. Santa Monica Airport Association represents more than 400,000 aviators, members and supporters in Santa Monica, Southern California and nationwide. Santa Monica Airport Association is opposed to any runway shortening and runway closure at Santa Monica. The factual basis for your proposed runway shortening and closure is fundamentally flawed. The city's efforts to strangle business at our municipal airport and push for closure without an honest evaluation of the pros and cons of this important issue is poor public policy and clearly against the public interest. In summary, runway shortening that City Council is proposing is simply playing politics with public safety. The following facts support our case. Number one, you're ignoring two lawsuits which are challenging your consent decree, one in the federal courts, one in the state courts, brought by reputable organizations like the Santa Monica Airport Association and local tenants and users of the airport. If your consent decree is thrown out, all this design build expense you've been proposing so far is a waste of money. Safety, you make reference to safety. Our all hazards mitigation plan for the city, done by your own safety experts, places the Santa Monica Airport as critical infrastructure. It's not disposable or important or desirable. It's critical infrastructure in cases of a natural emergency. Shortening the runway by any distance leaves pilots of aircraft of any size fewer options in the case of an emergency. Choosing to shorten the runway is clearly a political move which will have negative impacts on the impacts of safety of the airport. Page 1 of the staff report says, quotes, health and safety impacts and being considered without quoting any factual basis. If you look at the facts of Santa Monica Airport and compare them with our surface streets, they stand out like a sore thumb. NTSB data from 1999 to 2016 lists 14 injuries and 9 fatalities and 18 aircraft accidents within City of Santa Monica limits. No flying under the influence or hit and runs. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ellis? Alice Ellis. And can I remind the speakers I called to please be lined up against the wall and ready to speak after Ms. Ellis, Betsy Katz, Jacqueline Hamilton, and Alan Levinson. Welcome.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Alice Ellis. I have lived in Santa Monica on Bryn Mawr Avenue, west of the airport, with my husband and our daughter for 15 years. I, along with my neighbors, campaigned and voted for Measure LC, and we voted for the council members who said they supported Measure LC. We, the Santa Monica residents, were not given the opportunity to vote for the secret consent decree. I was at the airport rally in February when Mayor Winterer said that the runway would be shortened immediately, and that gave some of my neighbors hope that the promise of this great park will happen. Is Santa Monica no better than Flint, Michigan, that poisoned their residents with lead, or the city of Vernon that allowed a battery recycling plant to contaminate Los Angeles homes for decades? Only time will tell. But I fear you're dragging this out, and now the question of the asphalt not actually being removed is a sign of this council not only being on the wrong side of history, but refusing to act in the best interests of the residents you represent. If you do not shorten the runway by removing the 1,500 feet of asphalt, then you have done nothing.
Ms. Katz? All right, then we'll try Ms. Hamilton.
Good evening. My name is Jacqueline Hamilton. I'm with the Office of Congressmember Karen Bass, and we appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on this issue. As you know, Congressmember Bass's district comes right up to the Santa Monica border, and I think we have a few dozen feet of the city of Santa Monica in her district. But as my colleague Jeff Thompson mentioned from Councilmember Bonin's office, we are very concerned because the airport directly affects our constituents. I appreciate the swift movements toward shortening the runway. We would very much appreciate if the council would re-examine the earlier proposals, which did not make it fully to the council, for more westerly configurations for shortening the airport. It does feel as though the residents outside of the city of Santa Monica have been bearing some disproportionate impacts from the airport for a very long time, and it feels as though those impacts will continue to be disproportionate if the only things that are considered are options A and B. So we wish you the best as you continue wrestling with these difficult issues, but very much hope that you will take into consideration your impacts on your neighbors. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Hold on one second, Mr. Levinson. I'll call a few more names after you. Gavin Scott, Peter Donald, and it looks like Joe Schmitz will have 4 minutes because Joan Van Tassel has donated time. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Alan Levinson. Choose civility, so I'm going to try to behave. Close the airport, paint the runway, make it shorter, take out the asphalt. This decree, which a lot of us think is not, the city gave up a very lot for this decree. If the asphalt's not taken out, this decree becomes a total scam, a fraud, and a trick and a swindle. The asphalt has to come out. Anybody who's parked a car, we're not pilots, but we park cars. If you're parking your car in a small spot with 2 cars on either side, you're careful. You're super careful. If you're parking your car and there's nobody around and it's a spot for an SUV, you pull right in. Pilots are good. I've flown many times, as we all have, but mistakes happen. There's a reason why a 3,500-foot runway is 3,500 feet with safety zones of 300 feet on either end. As it stands right now, our houses are in the zones where generally there are not houses, where there's industrial buildings, parks, or nothing. When the decree was originally announced on the 28th of January, everybody was ecstatic. The claim was we're going to close the runway in 2028. The decree does not say that. The lawyers negotiated the decree. If they didn't negotiate with the FAA to immediately make the runway shorter and take out that asphalt, then I don't know what they negotiated. Please, I implore you, direct the staff to speed this process up, to come more in line with Mr. Cole's timetable of immediately or 3 months, or at least Mr. Winterer's timetable of the runway will be 3,500 feet in 6 months. Please take out the asphalt and get the show on the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I remind you, we really discourage people from applauding. In fairness to speakers who have different opinions. Thank you. Mr. Scott, welcome.
Thank you. Gavin Scott, I live at Marine and 18th. And what I'd like to urge, I'd like to back option B, but urge the council to do it much faster. It seems to me that to wait the length of time that we have already waited since the council had control of the airport back last year, and in all we will get at the end of this year is a line painted on the runway, is an insult to the people of Santa Monica, and particularly the people who are suffering under the constant bombardment of the jets. And I want to remind you all of the horrible human cost of what is happening now and the way it has got worse since this council had the power that was given it in the summer of last year. At least 12 times a day, there are aircraft going over our house and the house of my neighbours. And it's not just, oh, that's an unpleasant noise. It's like someone ripping your brain. It is tearing, you cannot speak, the windows rattle, your children cannot play in the garden. It is as if the jet is coming through your garden again and again and again every day, and it has got worse since this council took over. If all you are able to achieve by the end of this year is a painting of the line on the runway, I feel that you should be ashamed of yourselves for failing the people who have made it clear they want this airport closed. I beg of you to speed up the timetable and to commit yourselves to removing the asphalt as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Donald. So you are you speaking as chair of the airport committee?
Turn the stopwatches off. I'm just going to go on and on and on about the.
No, I want to know whether if
No,
you get 5 minutes.
Well, you see, I've woven a personal with the professional, so I can't. It'll be fine.
Okay.
I'm not. It won't be boring. I'm Peter Donald. I am the chair of the much vilified yet illustrious Airport Commission. And good evening, council and attorneys and managers and staff and so forth. So I've lived in this town for 45 years, and I'm sort of I've watched this airport grow. I'm going to change my whole speech around because I want to get the money shot off first in case I get run out of gas. But I want to tell you then why we've arrived at this conclusion. SMO is a relic of the 20th century. It must serve a new purpose for a different time. Our first step towards this goal is to create a 3,500-foot runway per the consent decree, using striping as a temporary measure while we study how best to rip up the excess asphalt and then move with all haste to return this land to its original state. On the scorecards, that's kind of doesn't. It kind of is. B is the only one. Number one is the only thing you've. I set out our recommendation to you last week, where I had a B1 and a B2, which was the B was the same. The B2 was to start doing the concrete replacement right away, and there was a second part to have the staff get with CEQA and start that process. Obviously, that's not what's being recommended, and it's not what's going to happen. So that's the way it is. So what I want to say, though, is that I want to say that the airport is it's 5 residents: a scientist, an attorney. I mean, you know most of us, an ex-pilot, a film editor, myself. And we think critically about most things, and we do about SMO.
So, Mr. Donald, so Are you speaking on behalf of the
I'm
airport?
speaking on behalf, I'm talking to you about the
But
airport
If
commission.
you're if you're speaking on behalf of the airport commission, you have extra time.
Oh,
If you're speaking as a member of the public, your time is up. I'm sorry.
See, I thought okay, you know what? Then we don't have to do this. Then I'm not gonna, you've thrown my timing off. Anyway, Ted.
Well, I asked you at the beginning.
Well,
you
I know,
didn't give me
I know.
a specific
Um,
answer.
So, yeah, anyway,
Well, so you can have more time if you speak on behalf of the airport commission. That's, you know, this is the way it works.
yeah.
I mean, we.
So
did
I guess,
all-
well, I made my main point. My main point was that we really wanted to, we really wanted what we wanted, and you all saw what we wanted. And you're obviously not going to do that. You're going to do one part of it and two parts of it you're not. I understand why. I wish it wasn't true, but that's where the commission came down, not unanimously, but you know, with the majority.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. And Mr. Schmitz, before you speak, is Joan Von Tassel here? I see a hand waving back there. All right, good. So you have 4 minutes. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. I've got a presentation. I am hoping that's up. Yeah.
While we're doing that, Zena Josephs will be our last speaker.
Good evening, Mayor Winter, council members. You know, I'm Joe Schmitz, and I speak on behalf of myself. Commissioner Donald spoke for the Airport Commission. First off, to take a step back, and absolutely, this is not an attempt to second guess the members of the council. I do not aspire to your job or the difficulties, choices you face. But the point of it, all the legislation, the many suits that could have gone up to the Supreme Court, had we prevailed with great cost and great risk, this is what SMO would look like without the Western Parcel. There would be no jets, and the prop business case would be destroyed. So I think that's worthy of keeping in mind. Let's look at what we got right now. SMO is not compliant with FAA regulations, and it has not been compliant, expressly not compliant since 2012. It's got no RSAs. We've been told it's safe, but it is not safe, and it is not compliant, and this has gone on for 5 years. What would it look like if it had been compliant, or it could have been and should have been compliant? Well, first off the bat, shave 600 feet from the runway. No consent decree. This is what it ought to be, should have been, ought to be right now. 300-foot RSAs, 600 feet shorter. That has not been acknowledged by the FAA. The FAA design document was changed in September 2012. Based on accident experience, it requires, absolutely requires, of the FAA and the airport operator, that would be the city, to install minimum of 300-foot RSAs, and that they can be compacted earth. Can't be waived, can't be ignored, and folks have known that. There's an adage, FAA safety regs are written in blood. This is option A. The Airport Commission is fine with option A. I'm sorry, it's right in front of me. Option B, thank you. And we're fine as the Airport Commission with option B, except that it's got pavement. Staff and I dispute the design distances, and they may be right, or I may be right. But the fact of the matter is, with the stopway that adds about 750 feet, the takeoff length is 4,200 and change. And that's, if you'll note, not much difference between an FAA compliant SMO right today. So what do you get when you get those stopways? You get larger and faster aircraft. You could see a Gulfstream 4 go out of here at 60,000 pounds. Now, even if the city and the FAA did not agree, and I don't think this city council would do that, it is the fact, and I have evidence to support that fact, that with that extra runway, pilots and operators use that extra safety margin. And unless there's an accident, there's no problem. The Airport Commission recommends this configuration.
Thank you, Mr. Schmitz.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Josephs.
Thank you. Speaking on behalf of the Board of Directors of Friends of Sunset Park, the Friends Board supports a two-phase plan endorsing option B with a centered runway and equal runway safety areas at each end of the runway, with restriping to be implemented as soon as possible. While phase one is being implemented, we feel the city should move forward on the environmental review process for phase two in order to permanently remove excess asphalt or concrete and replace it with natural environment compliant with any FAA high restrictions for runway protection zones. The Friends Board also supports improving access to the expanded airport park by adding pedestrian walkways and bike lanes and by making improvements to the airport Wallgrove 23rd Dewey intersection. Speaking for myself, I'm really puzzled when the runway protection zones are actually in the middle of residential neighborhoods. That's not what I understand runway protection zones to be. They should be empty land, a golf course, something that if a plane overshoots, they're not going to crash into houses. Mr. Scott mentioned a dozen takeoffs at his home. When I go to the airport commission meetings, which is bad enough, when I go to the airport commission meetings in the monthly noise reports, there are days when there are now 70 jet landings and takeoffs at SMO. Not every day, but peak days 70. So that's 36 takeoffs right over his house. So the jet traffic is increasing, and we're not sure that it's going to decrease with the 3,500-foot runway. We're grateful for everything that you've done and grateful to the staff and the consultants, but I got an angry email night before last from a member saying, well, you're moving the takeoff spot further west, further to Sunset Park. Why are you endorsing option B? I don't know where the planes are going to lift off. He says they lift off at Clover Park. They're going to be taking off now 300 feet closer to Sunset Park Homes. What are you doing? So, thank you.
Thank you. Council, we do have one late chit.
Move for 1 minute.
Seeing no objection, we have from Christian Fry for 1 minute.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the additional minute. I'll keep it as quick as I can. Let's see if I can get through what I had to say. SMO is a valuable and irreplaceable public transportation asset. We are fortunate as a city to have all the major transportation assets a community can have: roads, freeways, highways, bike share, public buses, light rail, and we even have an airport. Our community is truly fortunate. Did you know this is the 100th anniversary of our airport? This year, Cloverfield turns 100. We should never forget to honor and celebrate the great history of our airport, but what I ask you to consider is its future. It is impossible to miss the explosive innovation happening in the aviation and aerospace worlds. The future of transportation is electric, quiet, greener, safer. There are limits to solutions for increasing capacity on our roads and freeways, and many believe the only way to go is up to relieve the increasing traffic congestions. Drones, autonomous flying vehicles, vertical takeoff aircraft, small efficient regional transportation, a big blue bus at the airport. Many options. I really hope that you can consider the future of our airport and not just the short-term issues today. Thank you.
Thank you. So, council members, the matters before us, before we dive into it, I have a question for the city attorney. We have multiple recommended actions. Can we do them in one motion, or are there any require separate motions?
I would recommend you do separate motions, especially on the CEQA resolution.
All right. Well, so then let's start off with the first decision we have to make, which is select the preferred option for shortening the runway at SMO. Well, the staff is recommending that our choice is between option B and option A. So I'll entertain a motion on that decision.
And on action 1, I will move the staff recommendation for option B.
Second.
All right, the option B to shorten the runway is moved by McEwen and seconded by O'Day. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McKeown,
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor,
Yes.
and Mayor Winter.
Yes, so that passes 7-0. And next, we need to direct staff to proceed with further design of the preferred option, which is now number B, in order to establish a guaranteed maximum price for a design-build agreement between the City of Santa Monica and AECOM Technical Services, Inc. to complete runway shortening construction by December 2017 in accordance with the existing feasibility professional services agreement with AECOM. Someone like to make a motion?
I move staff recommendation number 2.
All right, moved by Himmelrich, seconded by O'Connor. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Winter,
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich,
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Yes.
Councilmember McKeown,
Yes.
Now, we should determine that the project is categorically exempt from the provisions of CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines sections 15061B3, 15302, and 15308.
I'll move it.
Second.
I was just going to say both.
And we can adopt the resolution at the same time.
Correct.
Okay, so we will find that the project is exempt from CEQA as in those various sections and adopt the attached resolution that the runway shortening project is categorically exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act. Now, was that your motion, Councilmember O'Connor? And who seconded it?
I did.
Okay, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Davis. Can we have a roll call vote on that, please?
Councilmember McKeown,
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connor,
Yes.
and Mayor Winter.
Yes, so that also passes unanimously. Councilmember McEwen.
Mayor, having completed the agendized item, I'd like to move on to something separate, but we can give direction on this even though it wasn't on the agenda. I would like to move that we direct staff to return to council as soon as possible with options for a project to remove the now unneeded pavement at either end of the runway, consider the CEQA implications, etc., and for the council to consider that option at that time.
Second.
All right, motion by McEwen, seconded by Himmelrich to direct staff to return with an expiration of removing what will be in the future the unnecessary tarmac at either end of the SMO runway. Does that sound about right? We'll have a roll call vote on that, please.
Councilmember O'Connor,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Day,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Winter,
Yes.
Councilmember Himmelrich,
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Yes.
Councilmember McKeown,
Yes.
All right.
Just for staff perspective, so we understand, I assume that motion is to come back with all potential options. Removal is one option, but everything that's possible.
Yeah, possible
That's right.
uses
Right
of
down
it.
to using the existing pavement as a roller skating rink, yes, and whatever option staff thinks are reasonable.
Do we clear? Okay, is that clear to everyone? Yes, certainly we want to look at all the options for what will no longer be usable runway space. All right. That concludes item 8A. And I'm hoping that we don't, Councilmember McEwen, do you have something to say?
Move to adjourn.
Well, no, I'm hoping that we don't have any adjournments 24 hours later. Seeing none, then we will be back here on June 13th, and I remind you once again of our Memorial Day observance at Woodlawn Cemetery at 11 on Monday.